College basketball today on SportsGrid. I'm Kevin Walsh. I'm joined by Coach James Young, and Coach and I talk through the entire Saturday slate. We've hit a lot of the biggest games, but one conference that Coach knows, he knows a lot of these conferences well, don't get me wrong, but a conference that, Coach, because of where we're located, you get up close and personal, and you've seen a lot of these best teams play, and it's the Big East. But before we preview today's slate, I need you to take me through your reaction to what UConn did to St. John's on Wednesday night. You beat a team by double digits, all good. You beat a team by 32, whoa. You hold a team to 40, and they miss 24 straight shots to end a game, score 14 second-half points. They don't have a single player score over 10. Their front court in Dylan Mitchell, Zuby Ejiofor, and Bryce Hopkins combined for 14 when Taris Reed scored 20 and Caravan scored 14. I mean, those two almost on their own outscored the entire St. John's roster. What is your reaction, even as you now have a couple of more days, JY, to sit with what UConn did to St. John's on Wednesday night?
You know, I went into the game thinking about, is St. John's the best team in the Big East and a team that could, you know, make a run, Kevin, at possibly a Final Four, a team that we had huge expectations for. And I came out of the game saying, uh-oh, have we disrespected Dan Hurley again? That performance was, and there's some big ones, right? Including the Michigan Duke game.
Mm-hmm.
It was, to me, the most singular, impressive performance of the season for the way they won, how they won it, and how good St. John's had been playing up to that point and beat them by 9 points in a previous matchup about 2 to 3 weeks ago. A big reason why I had liked St. John's going into the game was I thought that Zuby Ejiofor was going to outperform Taris Reed Jr. But I also had said Taris Reed Jr., if he stays out of foul trouble, can give people problems. He wasn't the best big man on the floor. He was the best player on the floor. And they put on, and I've had I don't want to know if I want to call it the luxury or the misfortune of coaching on the other sideline against Bob Hurley, who I call Mr. Hurley, still to this day. Whatever Dan said to his team before the game, and especially what he said at halftime when the game was pretty much, I felt, almost already decided, was the stuff of legend. That was so impressive that we went into the game saying, oh, well, maybe St. John's played themselves into a 3 seed or maybe a 2 seed. You come out of this now saying, man, UConn could be a 1 seed. If they play like that, play defense like that, Kevin, and Danny Hurley is secretly good at half-court execution, they excel in half-court basketball, you have to start thinking about, can UConn be one of those, is that big 3 now with Arizona and Duke and Michigan, and now Florida, maybe big 4? Maybe it's a big 5, Kevin, and we need to put UConn up there with those other 4 teams.
What's very interesting to me, so I want to be clear, I think UConn can win the national championship. I think they are an incredible basketball team. I think they're deep, and I think Hurley is one of the best coaches in the country. I think he has an argument for the best coach in the country. I think he might be right now the scariest coach you could possibly go against in the NCAA tournament, okay? In the last 3 tournaments, he's won it twice and was eliminated by the champion as an 8th seed in a game they nearly won. Again, by the team who ultimately then won the championship. I find some of the 1 seed stuff to be a little jarring just because right now in the net, all right, on KenPom, this isn't a top 5 team. Maybe the idea is they're going to win out. Do I think they are 1 seed caliber? Sure, right? But I'm not sure if they're actually worthy of grabbing a 1 seed. But nevertheless, it was such a dominating performance that it doesn't just mean something for UConn. To Coach's point, it is so demoralizing for St. John. You know how, Coach, a couple of weeks ago, Kansas lost. You're like, Arizona lost to Kansas. Like, that's good for them. Get a loss on the plate, learn a little bit, dust yourselves off. What happened to St. John's is not good for them. No matter how Rick tries to spin it, it is, as somebody who's played some St. John's to win the national championship, it is what it is, right? We were always going to likely have to hedge out, but this is just a team that becomes very difficult to take serious now in that race because of just how much destruction ultimately we saw in that game. Each of these teams are on the slate today, JY. I'll start with UConn, home against Seton Hall. Us here in Jersey can't get in the mix, but I know you still have capped this game.
Of course I've capped this game because of what I know about how I think Shaheen Holloway is going to play. You got to slow the game down. And these two teams, they play each other. These are two Jersey guys, Shah being from Elizabeth, Danny being from Jersey City. People don't notice they have the utmost respect for each other. I like this game to go under. You're looking at two teams, Kevin, that are number 1 and number 2 in effective field goal percentage defense. Seton Hall has to play this way. This is one of the things I've talked about so many times as a coach. If your style of play is, I could play this way, and Danny's team can do either or, then that's what you get. Slow down basketball. But here's the other thing. They're also number 1 and number 2 in offensive rebounding percentage. So what does that mean, folks? That means when you're on the defensive glass, you can't leak out and try and run your secondary or your sideline break. You have to put 5 guys to the boards, which means you got to secure the rebound first, which then means it negates fast breaks, which then also means it slows down the game in less possessions. Under 130.5 today for Seton Hall versus UConn.
Yeah, it's a game that I am kind of glad I can't get involved with because sometimes I see low totals with talented teams and I'm like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like but it's low for a reason, right, JY? And it's actually a lower total relative to the close of when these teams last played. Last time they played we had a 132.5. We're seeing, and that game just like sneaks over the number 69-64 due to a 42 second half effort from Seton Hall. If Seton Hall gets to 40 in either of these halves, they might, hang a banner for Shaheen Holloway at Seton Hall. JY, St. John's Villanova, 7.5 point number here for the Johnnies. Nova, pretty clearly the third best team in this conference. We expect them to be in the tournament. How does St. John's respond from Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think they're just going to be better offensively. So I would look at the team total over. Now, I would say this. Villanova is the third best team in the Big East. And obviously, my affinity and knowing some of those people over there. What's their signature win? They don't have one. They don't have one. I would have given Villanova a better chance if they don't catch Rick Pitino's team the next game after this beatdown. But do remember, a couple of weeks ago, I think on a Saturday, or maybe it was a Sunday, Villanova went and played UConn on the road and almost stole it. Do not be surprised if that game is tight and close. And I'm a big man, so you know where I'm going. Zubi Ejiofor, his worst game of his season, or maybe of his career, arguably, versus Duke Brennan, a sneaky good double guy.
I'm really excited to see how St. John's responds in that spot. We'll get to the rest of your ranked action after the break. I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
All right, college basketball today. We're back with you on a Saturday morning going through the ranked action here that we haven't maybe been able to get to just yet. JY, I want to stop over at this Nebraska-USC game for just a moment. It feels like Nebraska has become the least discussed top 15 team that I can remember. They started the year 20-0. The first loss was at Michigan. There's not a single result, I feel, that covered them in more glory than the loss at Michigan. They have followed that up by losing all of the games that they have played against the top of the Big Ten. Not that they're all, like they lost close to Illinois, close to Purdue, close to Iowa, but they have lost. They check in today out west, which we know is something that is still kind of daunting, right, JY, for these Big Ten teams. And we saw Illinois get clipped by UCLA in one of the most, for anybody that didn't watch that game, someone who had UCLA, it was one of the worst bets I've ever placed in my entire life 10 minutes in. And then UCLA somehow won the game. It was a crazy comeback there. Coach, does anything jump out to you with Nebraska and USC?
Much, in my opinion, this game means to USC. I mean, a USC team that's has a weird like quad one loss record. They're 2-7 against quad ones, but they're 7-2 against quad twos, right? So they beat up on those middle tier quad teams, but they don't beat the quad one teams. Now, the question now becomes is, Nebraska is considered quad one, right? But we don't talk about them like they're quad one. So that's where it becomes really interesting. Nebraska is going to try and win the rebounding margin and play this game in the half court and rely on Freddie Hoiberg's offense and their discipline. USC, with the must bust, is going to have to try and run and make this game go up and down, keep the pace high. I look at the fact that Nebraska having a perfect record versus those quad 2 and quad 4 area, and USC struggling with the quad 1. I like Nebraska to pull away and win this game late. So maybe you could watch USC jump out early, get that thing to a 2.5 or get it to a pickup scenario where you can get them on the money line And then Freddie Hoiberg's team, because their execution and playing the game in the half court, particularly in the second half, steal it late. 4.5 is a lot for me to play. I don't mind if you do, but the game's going to be so tight. I think you can find it in game at a money line number that you want to take.
I have not bet it yet, but the Elijah Arenas props are very interesting to me. Chad Baker-Mazara comes back 2 games ago against Oregon. He has scored over 20 in each of the games since returning. On the first night back, Arenas plays 34 minutes, scores 13 points on some poor shooting. He follows it up by going to UCLA, only scoring 10, gets into maybe a little bit of foul trouble, finds himself only playing 21 minutes in the game. Arenas is talented. He is struggling mightily with efficiency. Elijah Arenas is shooting 33% from the field right now. And that's not just 3-point percentage dragging down the numbers right now for Arenas. I do wonder, though, for the freshman coming back home in a top 15 environment, if he kind of meets that moment a little bit. It's something I'm going to be watching. Something I'll be watching in betting coaches Gonzaga and St. Mary's. I'm a little late to the best of this money line price. I know I saw plus 130s 2 hours ago. These are now more plus 110s, plus 105s. But I think St. Mary's wins this game. And I think it's kind of as simple as this Gonzaga team is really good. They're not unbeatable. And I know 28-2 is fantastic, but they've flirted with it I feel a few times, right? And that includes trailing to this St. Mary's team when they played them at home and, in the first half. At the end of the first half, they were down by 4. I think St. Mary's was super impressive, and maybe I'm overrating it, but I don't think I am, in that home victory against Santa Clara by 19 points. For those that don't know, this is a really, really good Santa Clara team. I think we expect them to play in the tournament, maybe, right? I would think so, Coach. I like St. Mary's here in this spot against the Zags.
So I'm going to ask you a question. If St. Mary's were to do that, what do they have to do?
Oh, I mean, they're going to have to. You know what's interesting, JY? Because I want to say they're going to have to drag him into one of those rock fights, right? But this Gonzaga team, again, relative to other years, I find them to be one of the reasons I like St. Mary's, Coach, I guess, is I don't think they will struggle too much to keep Gonzaga under 75, under 72 type of thing. Where, and again, it might be much lower than that, but I feel very good about what St. Mary's will bring to the table defensively in this game.
And that's why you have to take the under. Because okay. I think if you look at, there are 3 coaches, I think, in the nation that do a great job of getting you to play their way, especially in their gym. Sampson, Barnes, and Bennett. I think they just do a job of getting you to play their way. And Gonzaga being literally dead last, I do believe, in league in regards to average possession length defensively means they're not going to get out in the passing lanes and force turnovers, right? So the runouts are gone. So that means half-court game. 2 teams that don't turn the ball over. A team in St. Mary's that gets you to slow down as much as they want to, especially offensively. A team that's not going to push the pace defensively. And Gonzaga, all those things lead to a defensive battle. Number 1 and number 3 in the league in effective field goal percentage defense. This game is an under, and that gives St. Mary's, in my opinion, the best chance to win.
Up next, the first overall pick odds have been dropped. And BYU is in a very interesting spot on the road today against West Virginia. We break that down after a quick break right here on College Basketball Today.
think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too. And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
College basketball today here. JY, they dropped first overall pick odds for the first time on FanDuel. And minus 135 Darren Peterson, plus 135 AJ Dybantsa, plus 750 Cam Boozer. Big time numbers if you would like to bet anybody else. You're getting 100 to 1 or better. What stands out to you, Coach, when you see the odds to be the first overall pick in the NBA draft?
I completely disagree. And this is from someone that was on the Darren Peterson train of it just, you take, in this just year's draft, maybe based off of what you need because there's a big three along with Cam Boozer. I can't, in my right mind as a coach, say to myself right now, if I have the number one pick and I'm gonna bet on a sure horse, that I'm gonna pick a guy that when he hits a big three in a game, instead of trying to pour it on, is pointing to his coach to tell him to get him out the game. Kevin, I can't get that out of my head. Is he hurt? Still really that bad? Is he disinterested? I don't know. But when you go and you look at, the teams that have a chance to draft, and you kind of go through the big three. I mean, let's say the top 4 to 5 guys that can go, right? Are teams: Sacramento, Indiana, Nets, Wizards, and let's say Hawks. Right, because the Hawks own the pick from New Orleans. I think in 4 of those 5 scenarios, you're taking Dybantsa over Peterson. The only one you may not is if Atlanta wins the lottery and they say, okay, we have Ricochet and Johnson. We don't need Dybantsa. My solution, you trade Ricochet. You trade him. And you just put Dybantsa in the front court with Jalen Johnson. You look at Sacramento, they're blowing it up. You go with the guy that's going to be more of a home run. That's going to be Dybantsa. You look at Indiana, I think Dybantsa and Siakam could be a scary 3-4 combo. The Nets, Kevin and I did the draft. They took 19 point guards in the first round. I think they need a small forward. There's Dybantsa. Washington, you have a front line. Can you imagine Dybantsa, Sarr, and AD? I mean, Sammy right now may yell in my ear right now. He's so excited about that one. So to me, because of the fact that where I think 4 to 5 top teams will take it, and the 5th team, you can just trade a guy to go put him in, I think the odds are best for Dibanza, and I think I would take him number 1. I'd lay the money right now because I think it could flip in a week or two.
So, my issue is, do we have a big 3 or not? Because this says we don't. This says Darren Peterson's a bit better than Dibanza, and Boozer is not in their class. And I don't know where that evidence is. Cam Boozer is going to win the Wooden Award unanimously. He locked up the award, I think, before we got to 2026. Like, the award was, I believe, approaching minus 1,000 before January. They are the best team in the country, arguably. And he is the only guy who's going in the lottery on that team. How many guys are getting drafted on that team? Sarr, Evans. I mean, I guess that, could someone take a flyer on Gung? Okay, sure. Maybe I'm being a little harsh, but like, it's not last year's Duke. I keep talking about it. JY mentions Sacramento liking Dibanza. Yeah, I'm also pretty sure Vivek probably, if Duke wins a national championship, will take Boozer 1. We talk about Indiana and who fits with the Pacers. I think Boozer would fit brilliantly. Day 1. I think there are teams that would love to get Darren Peterson, like Atlanta, like Brooklyn. I'm also pretty sure if Utah gets the first pick, on the lottery night, they'll call it in. They're like, nope, it's AJ. We've been trying to get AJ. If Utah gets the first pick, they might just be like, actually, it was rigged. Ha. We paid a ton of money to get Dibanza to BYU, and we paid even more to get him to the Utah Jazz. Is it a big 3 or not? The price says it's not. It says it's 2 guys with 1 guy out in front. And that's, I don't know, man. Like, how is the guy who after every single Kansas game, someone asks me, is Darren Peterson playing tonight? Minus 135 in February? I can't get there. So I agree with Coach on that part of it. With the Boozer plus 750 number, do we watch Cam, like, the general do we watch Cam Boozer? Am I seeing different things? That he averages like the same amount of assists per game as Dibanza. All right. It's going to be an interesting draft process. Let's get to all of the action here, the biggest games on the slate after a break on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today. only on SportsGrid.
All right, we are going to go through the biggest games on this board, but I think it would be a disservice to talk about the first overall pick and not talk about Dybonsa's game today against West Virginia, JY. It's a West Virginia team that's good defensively. They grind games to a halt. What are you looking for here, if anything, in this matchup in the Big 12?
Honestly, I'm looking at the under in this matchup today. This is a sneaky big game for West Virginia. They're only 3-8 in quad one wins, 5-3 in quad two. So a win today would do them wonders in regards to the pack. I think BYU could take it on the money line if you want to play it that way. But to me, West Virginia is going to want to slow this game down because I think that's the only way that they can do so. And I'm going to say this, and this may sound like completely like, what is Coach thinking with this? Did you guys watch how bad they were in regards to BYU in their game versus Central Florida? Giving up a team that shot 60 some odd % from the 3-point line. This is what Coach Young would have, well, that Coach Young would have a pride check game in regards to we need to be better defensively because, you know, BYU is 12th in the Big 12 in effective field goal percentage defense. They don't first turnovers. They're 12th in defensive efficiency. They need to be better defensively. So I think he challenged them in practice. I think West Virginia is going to drag them to the deep end of the pool. I like BYU to win outright, and I'll look at West Virginia's team total under because West Virginia can't score, and BYU needs to be better defensively after the last performance. Their pride's on the line. They show up today and they defend.
Yeah, I'm, JY, just taking a look here right now, and, you know, I was trying to figure out just to make sure I got the best of the number, but I'm just going to end up really playing BYU. I think on the money line here, I mean, you could lay 2, you could lay 1.5, but ultimately, BYU offensively has a very clean argument to being the second best offense in this conference. The best offense I think we would consider is Arizona. And, you know, certainly when you can, you know, when you start to not just factor in efficiency, but tempo, Arizona scored 88 points on West Virginia. I have no reason to believe that BYU isn't going to get theirs today against this West Virginia team who it's not a good offense. And they're just not of the level here with the Cougars. So I think this is actually a good spot. I know that this is spots we worry about, right? Maybe looks a little easy. But, you know, Coach asked the kind of rhetorical question like, hey, did you watch to you, the people, UCF, BYU? I bet UCF at 12.5, watched it get to 14.5, bet it again, watched the first 15 minutes of the game, and then said, sweet, I'm going to turn the blacklist on. I won my money. They rolled them. They massacred BYU. I think that's why we're getting a lower number here. I think there's some worry from the odds makers, right? Or from the betting, people out there like, oh, wait a minute. Is BYU cooked? BYU is cooked as it relates to making a deep tournament run. I don't think they're cooked here today at West Virginia. Let's stay inside the Big 12 here, Coach. It's Kansas. It's Arizona. It's another potential first overall pick when we think about Darren Peterson and what he brings to the fold here today for this group. What do you like here, JY, when you line up Arizona and Kansas?
Yeah, for me, it's Trey White going over that 12.5, and just the fact of him being so bad in the first matchup with them in Arizona, and then having Darren Peterson there now, I think honestly loosens up and gives less pressure for them. I also think Kansas, to me, wants to try and slow this game down. And we talked about it earlier about, Arizona being back to full strength. Coach Lloyd using his bench, trying to get this game up and down in tempo. I really think Bill Self tries to drag this game to a halt. I like Trey White to go over because it's going to be in half court. I think they're going to load up on Peterson. I think Peterson goes off. I think Trey White goes off. And we have a sneaky good game sometimes, folks, styles make fights. And maybe this Kansas team may be a team that could be a recipe for disaster, especially when Badunga can rebound. So I wouldn't mind it if you took the point for Kansas, because I think they're just getting, honestly, way too much.
Yeah, I hear that. I lean towards Kansas as well in this game, but I'm settling in with a Darren Peterson prop over the 17.5. I think we're maybe starting to see some like minus 122 in the market there. So, always try and clip the best of the number if you can bet these college basketball player props here. Darren Peterson, in the last 2 times that he has played teams in the ballpark of this Arizona tempo, scored 18 points. It's just ridiculous. Scored 18 points and 23 points in 20 minutes and 18 minutes. So to be very, very clear, Darren Peterson has scored the last 2 times that he has seen teams of this pace. I understand the defensive caliber. I do. I am not trying to downplay it. But he scored 41 points in 38 minutes. If I can get 30, 35 minutes from Darren Peterson tonight, I think he scores 25. I think he goes out there and puts on a showcase here. And I love how coaches described it. The idea that Peterson needs a game like this, right? As much as I don't find myself agreeing with where Peterson is priced, it doesn't mean that the books are off base. I know that people have betted at minus 125 and watched that number move in their favor. So the number is there for a reason. And those people who have played Peterson, Coach, would feel excellent if he goes out there and shines today. Let's do another massive game of the Big 12. It's Iowa State. It's Texas Tech. It's a spot where the Cyclones can make a statement here when we talk about potential one lines, right? We talk about UConn. We talk about Florida. We talk about Illinois. Iowa State, when we got the committee's unveiling, were actually that 4th 1 seed, along with Michigan, Arizona, and Duke. What do you think here with Iowa State and Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think this is one of those games that Grant McCaslin's team is going to really try and make this a dogfight early on. I'm not willing to lay to 10.5 this early. I think it was lower than this, Kevin. So if you didn't get in earlier, then you really missed your number by maybe a point or 2. For me, this is going to be T.J. Ossenberger's team just weathering the early punch, the early onslaught, the early effectiveness, the early grit that Texas Tech is going to have. And at some point, they're going to punch them dead in the mouth mid-first half or late first half and go on a run. So to me, it's Iowa State live. Let that thing drop. If you want to wait till halftime, I don't blame you. It could get away from you by then. But I think at about the 12-minute mark, after that under 12 or under 8-minute timeout, there's going to be something said if that game is close, and they're going to blow that game open. I don't think that Texas Tech has the manpower or the toughness to stay with them. If you want to look at Lipsy over the assist prop, I wouldn't blame you as well. But to me, Iowa State pulls away late first half, early second half. Get the number, just get it lower than a 10.5 it's at right now.
Yeah, I lean towards Iowa State as well. I just feel I've maybe missed out on the best of this number, really is kind of what it boils down to. And, we can't, for me, numbers matter. And I know some people would say, what's the difference between 9.5, 10.5? What's the difference between 8.5, 10.5? A point or 2. And it could make a difference because this is a Texas Tech team that does come with some shooting variance. We talk sometimes about, hey, like these are games to watch live. And I think Coach is very right to identify this game as that, where you will likely know early if Texas Tech is going to make this a game. I would also keep your eyes on Momcilovic, who I think could maybe feel pretty loose at home against this Tech team and what they're bringing to the table defensively. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We come back. Duke, Virginia, top 15 showdown in the ACC. How about a couple of ranked games in the SEC? Bama, Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas. We continue to go through the biggest games here on a college basketball Saturday on College Basketball Today.
do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, let's make it happen here, Coach. It's coming up in about 15 minutes' time. It's Duke, Virginia. It is a big-time game within the ACC. These are two top 15 teams. When you look at KenPom, these are right now two top teams inside the AP's 11 right now. Duke number 1, Virginia sitting at 11. I played Virginia at plus 10.5. I went through the Blue Devils matchups here against top 15 teams. Kansas, early season without Darren Peterson, they beat by 12. Florida, they beat by 1 at home. Beat Michigan State by 6. Lost to Texas Tech by 1. Beat Michigan by 5. You want to throw in Arkansas by 9. Lost to UNC by 3. They did roll Louisville up. I will absolutely give them that. But more often than not, JY, when Duke plays a really good team, they win, but it is a single-digit game. That's what I expect here today between Duke and Virginia.
Well, I also think, Kevin, with the style of play that Virginia plays, a little bit different than that pack line, their ability to really guard you particularly well still and force perimeter jump shots. And you look at a Duke team that's one of the slowest teams in adjusted pace of play in the country. So a Virginia team that needs to play defense and walk it up versus a team that's more than comfortable. And actually, that's the best way Duke plays is walk the ball up the floor. I love under 140.5 in the matchup today.
All right, so JY going to rock with an under there between Duke and Virginia. A game that I am betting to the under. It's late night Florida and Arkansas, where at 170.5, I think this number is too tall. The Gators are in a class of their own defensively right now in this conference. I think it'll be pretty jarring for Arkansas, who's been enjoying some up-tempo games and offense-only teams, Auburn, Bama, A&M. I think that the Razorbacks are going to be struggling to see 80 points in this game. But I also don't know if Florida is just going to smooth walk to 100, right, the way they did against Alabama. Arkansas might as well be, Niagara, okay, when you compare them to the Crimson Tide with just how much, again, Alabama tempo-wise is just a completely different animal here, JY. To me, I think this 170.5 number is buying too much into Arkansas, scoring 90 in all these games. Florida's a different beast here. Give me the under 170.5.
Yeah, and I'm just playing it a different way, and I'm taking Florida minus the points. You could argue that Florida's on a different class defensively. I'm going to just say this. Florida's on a different class completely than everyone else. And it's because of their three-headed monster in the front court of Howe, Condon, and Chinaloo. Too much. And if you want to get over 170.5, that means that Florida's got to get misses, which means run out for Arkansas. But Arkansas is going to struggle just getting the rebound. And with that front court, Kevin, you're going to have to send all 5 guys to the boards. That means no one leaks out for the outlet. No one's leaking up the floor. Everybody rebounds, especially if Chinaloo stays out of foul trouble. And if he does, I don't see how Arkansas can keep up with this game because they're going to get beat up inside and get into foul trouble. Give me Florida minus the points.
Let's stay inside the ranked SEC slate here, JY. It is Tennessee and Alabama, a top 25 showdown over there in Knoxville. What are you looking for here in this game where the total's been moving a little bit this morning, maybe moving the direction you told people it was? I'm seeing some 164.5 on its way down to 163.5 here.
Yeah, it's simply put, Rick Barnes is going to make this a Rick Barnes game. He's going to do so. And Alabama, who wants to get out and run, I think people need to understand something, folks. If you are going to run a transition, you need the ball first. And if you need to get in transition, you send to have someone that leaks out for the outlet, and then you're sending your wings up the floor. You're going against a team that's rugged and can rebound. That's the kryptonite to running because you can't get the ball. Or if you're trying to get the ball, you got to block everybody out. I love under in this spot. I like Tennessee in this spot. And if you want to go one further, and I talked about this before, and I don't know, you got to shop around and find it because I looked at FanDuel, wasn't there. I'm sure other books will have it. Jalen Carey over his rebounding prop. Last year at Vanderbilt, this year at Tennessee, one of, if not the best offensive rebounder in the SEC. So he's done it multiple years, multiple stops, versus a team that doesn't block out well and doesn't have a big that can keep him off the boards. Tennessee, under. Jalen Carey, rebounds, over.
Something that was brought to my attention by one of our producers during this show is tonight could very well be the last time we see Gonzaga versus St. Mary's. Gonzaga is leaving next year to a new conference. I know we expect them to play every single year in the conference championship game. Maybe Santa Clara spoils the party. It is, it's the last regular season WCC St. Mary's Gonzaga game, though, right? We know that as much, Coach. And this is, it's funny because you've rightfully, I think, talked about on the heels of Michigan and Duke. Gonzaga's probably going to grab themselves deep in the regular season out of conference showdown. We usually at least can bank on, they're playing a big one against St. Mary's, right? Like every year. And this is a big one here tonight where Gonzaga is a slight road favorite against their biggest rival, in my opinion.
Yeah, their biggest rival, and if this is the way it's going to go out, it's going to go out in a slugfest. I kind of remember that last Syracuse-Georgetown game in the Big East tournament before Syracuse left to go to the ACC, and it was a slugfest. Well, Coach Bennett's going to have this a slugfest, and I think that's the way that St. Mary's wants to play it. I think that's the way that they'll defend it. But also, sneakily, folks, it's the way Gonzaga defends. Or not a get out, we call it, up the line, right, Kevin? Up the line, in the pass lane, get live steal, fast break, run. They are very much a pack it in, keep everybody in front of you, don't let the ball get into the paint, contest, block out, run your offense. So with that, this leans into what St. Mary's is good at. Give me the under in the matchup tonight between Gonzaga and St. Mary's.
Yeah, I don't mind the look. I think Coach is right that it kind of goes in line with me liking St. Mary's on the money line in this game. The number is working towards them. I think you can still get the 2.5, but if you're playing money line, plus 130s or now really plus 115, plus 110, even some plus 105. I think the Gales step up here and grind this game to what they need and where they are incredibly comfortable. I was very encouraged with what St. Mary's showed in that game against Santa Clara. No look ahead. I think they're ready for this one tonight against the Bulldogs. One more break. We come right back. It's best bet time here on College Basketball Today.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Now, I don't want to spoil a good thing, but so far, so good is how I would describe the best bet segment here on college basketball today. I can speak for myself that the first week of us doing this show, I got as lucky as I will get. Clemson absolutely did not deserve to cover that game. And Coach was able to, bang out a Houston winner. And then last week, I actually faded Houston. And that they went outright, which was great. We took the points. And then Coach gave out another Houston-related winner. We are not really trying to buck the trend, people. Now, maybe I'm not doing my part because instead of a side, I have a team total. And that is on me. But Coach is once again looking to give the people a winner inside a Houston Cougars basketball game. Make it happen here, JY.
Yeah, listen, you lose 3 games in a row. People are questioning your team. And you have 3 days of getting your you-know-what kicked by Calvin Sampson and the Cougars staff. You ever go on YouTube or Twitter and watch their practices? It's like a football game broke out. Well, you know who's going to pay for that? Tad Boyle in Colorado. I'm laying 10.5 in the first half. I think that you will have these guys foaming out the mouth. They're going to come at you. They're going to punch you. Usually Houston's the second half team, Kevin, when they do this. I think they have to get their mojo back. I know our boys have their 3-man weave as Emmanuel Sharp 3+ made threes. I look at it the other way. Houston smokes them and defends them. Minus 10.5 in the first half.
All right, JY, we will be rooting that in as Houston has been very good to you early season. I'm going at Kentucky a little bit here. I know what the number says, and if it's right, great. Kentucky wins, good for them. It would be a fantastic win for Mark Pope and this Wildcats team who, responded somewhat admirably against South Carolina, but obviously it was a tough 3-game drought that they suffered. The Auburn loss was really, really difficult. But can Kentucky win, lose? I don't care. They cannot guard teams like Vanderbilt. We've seen it in each of Mark Pope's first 2 seasons here in the SEC. These high-octane, elite efficiency, up-tempo teams score on Kentucky. and Vanderbilt is no different. Vanderbilt has only been held under 80 points in SEC play 3 times against Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas. They're the 3 slowest teams in conference. That isn't Kentucky. It sets up here for Vanderbilt to be at 80, and then it is up to Kentucky to meet that moment. We'll see if they can. We will find out. But these teams played once, and Kentucky lost the game by 25. So if they bounce back, good for them. I don't know. I kind of don't care. I guess I do, but not when it comes to this bet. Vanderbilt team total over the 77.5, minus 105. It's the best bet here on this Saturday. JY, just to flip through some of these other spots on the card. Clemson, Louisville, I like the under 146.5. That's some ACC action. Playing BYU money line, St. Mary's money line. What else are you on here today for Saturday?
Yeah, I like St. Mary's Gonzaga under. I like Florida minus the points. I like St. John's Nova will be interesting. That's going to be a live play. St. John's has to get their mojo back. Villanova needs a game. Tennessee, I like them to go that game to go under. I do love Jalen Carey over his rebound props. BYU should be able to get it on the money line at West Virginia. I mean, Kevin, I can keep going and going and going. It'll be a great game of college basketball, and it's going to start right at noon. I want people to watch closely this Seton Hall game versus UConn. This will be a slowdown game. It will not be every game like this today, but expect a dogfight between 2 teams with 2 coaches from Jersey who have a lot of respect for each other, and Shaheen Holloway and Dan Hurley.
JYU mentions like in Florida, I played the under 170.5. I played Tennessee minus 4.5. And then a reminder of the 3-man weave today here, our favorite college basketball player props. Both JY and I involved with Kansas players today. Coach on Trey White over the 12.5. I am on Darren Peterson over 17.5 points here. As Darren Peterson, I believe, is in a spot to shine. And I think, Coach, we've kind of talked about that as really the biggest game on our slate today, Kansas and Arizona. Remind people just one more time what you like in that game.
Trey White over 12.5 points, only 4 points first time matchup. Darren Peterson there. I expect those 2 guards to eat. Really good game tonight.
Yeah, I think both Coach and I think Kansas can hang inside that 10.5 point spread that's starting to appear. We'll see if Arizona can make another statement inside the Big 12. This is going to be a ton of fun to follow, people, and we're going to continue to do it with you throughout the March Madness. As we are, next time we do this, going to officially be into March. No other changes, right? Up next, Cilio Show.
You think tanking is hurting the NBA right now too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
I actually, and I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.